everybody. Sorry, I'm so low. I'm trying to get really close to my project today so that you can get a good view because I would really like to talk to you about like this miracle product that has hit the shelves, and it is we're now carrying different brands in our store, acuratedness.com. But I wanted to show you the miracle of decor transfers. So this brand that I'm working with today is by Prima. It's called Redesign, and we carry a lot of the different transfers, but this one is called Postal Birds. So there's a bunch of script and a bunch of different birds, but we're going to work with it in encaustic today because the instructions on here on the tube are actually for furniture, which applies really well to mixed media because basically you just need a sealed surface, and then once the surface is sealed and dry, you can transfer on your image. But I'm going to show you how to use it in encaustic, and to me it's just like mind blowing. So I'm going to show you that, and I'm going to hold up the pieces as we go. Like I said, I have the camera nice and low today so that I'll be able to show you all the different steps and basically how to apply these, and then a few other products at the same time that you may want to combine. So what I actually have on my boards was I pulled out a bunch of previous encaustic backgrounds. So I'll show you this one. It's just a bunch of colors when I was clearing a palette, I imagine, or something like that. And I just refused it this morning using my Iowa Tawny torch. So I just gave it a nice warm refuse, and it blended a few of the colors and took out a little bit of the texture, but I'm okay with that. And I still don't know what's happening with this one, but I think it's going to be a great surface for a transfer. So I'm going to work on that one. I also grabbed another one that once upon a time used to be a painting with a real tag and a real price and everything, and then clearly it hadn't sold and I got tired of it. So I just covered it in this lime green wax. So you can still see there's a lot of texture through it and things like that, but maybe it's a good surface, if nothing else, to just demonstrate to you how to use these transfers. And then I have this other one which has a lot going on, but you can see that already there is a bird in here. So I just added that bird, and I'm going to show you how to go through that process. My wax is warming as we speak. So for now, I'm going to start with a previously painted board, and that way I'll be able to easily show you the whole process. So this one, you can see it still has the tape on the sides. It has lots of wax, lots of texture. It has not been fused. So I am going to go ahead with my torch. Let me get this right underneath so you guys can see it. And I am going to fuse. I'm going to lift it a little bit, which normally nobody fuses vertically, but I'll just keep holding it up so that you can see it. And remember, this has been cold sitting in my studio for years, so I want to heat it sort of slowly. I don't want to just blast it with the heat. So I'm going to make quick passes. The corners where they've chipped off would indicate years and years and years of layers. And sometimes with an old background like this, it's just good to just give it a good old fuse, a good old melt, and see what's going on. The colors aren't working at all, and for that reason I'm happy to just fuse it out, let it melt, let what may come to the surface. It's all good. So unlike in mixed media and in my acrylic classes and things like that, where students who often get frustrated with an old painting, they tend to just say, oh, I'm going to prime over it, or I'm going to paint it all white and start over. And that may be true in the mixed media world. However, in encaustic, it's really interesting because I find that the more I melt something, the more I am opening myself up to possibility of something more interesting to happen. So it's like a complete blowout here, and I can't hold it up because it's molten right now, but I'm just going to let it kind of do its thing. And as it's warm and liquid, it's going to keep moving and kind of do like an acrylic pour technique. So that's what's sort of happening with these colors. They're all mixing and melding. And I'll see if I can move the camera closer so you guys can see that. There you go. You can see the colors are all starting to mix together and do their thing. All right, so I can't move it from this spot until it is, there we go, a little more solidified. While it's molten, there's not much I can do. But so let's talk about, while this is cooling, let's talk about the transfers themselves. So the transfers from Redesign come in a tube. Most of them actually do come in a tube, although I have used some by Aussie Decor transfers yesterday, which actually just came folded up in a plastic pamphlet. So, but the ones that we carry right now in the Redesign are in tubes, which makes it a bit tricky because anything, as you know, that comes out of a tube has a shape memory, right? A muscle memory. So we're going to take it out of the tube. I'm almost able to move this. So anyway, as it comes out of the tube, I'll show you one sheet at a time. You'll see what happens. You have a backing sheet, which is just this white sheet right here. And then you actually have the glossy transfer sheet of the images on top. So the lines, you see these little like hash marked lines? Those are just for you to line up your project and in the direction that they intended. So that would be the bird upright if you follow those lines. That's really there for furniture placement. So if you're putting it on a dresser or something like that and you need to align things, that's what those marks are. Those marks do not transfer onto your project. The text and the birds and the branches and all that are definitely part of the design. So you'll want to, keeping the back attached, you're going to want to cut out the pieces that that work for you. So I think I'm going to grab maybe this blue bird to start. And when you cut it out, you want to make sure, actually, you know what? I'm going to use a different one only because I see a different bluebird on the other sheet, this one here, and it's a little more interesting to me because it's got green in it and I have that lime green background. So I think that will be a good one for that project. Okay, so I'm going to keep the background on there and I'm going to use my scissors and decide which of the text I want to keep with it, because as I'm cutting it out, I'm going to include that text. So I'll keep part of that text, but not all of it. I'm going to cut around the bird, and I'm going to avoid the bird that is beside it. So cutting around, but making sure that it's still on the backing. There we go. So that's good. And now there's some text on here that I think I'm going to separate just by cutting it out. And I can easily place that then anywhere I want, or later on not at all. So you just want to cut the parts separate. Okay, so this one I can move now. And you can see it is molten and you know, it's ready for carving, it's ready for texture, it's ready for all kinds of things. But that is just to show you that when you do have an old painting that is no longer has any purpose to you, rather than scrape it all back and start over, I just like to do a full fuse. And you can see it's actually quite pretty, right, when you look at all the different things. So it's like an acrylic pour. It's very hot right now, so it's foggy, but it will probably be quite lovely later on and almost finish worthy. So I'm going to grab that green one that I just showed you and show you the basic transfer. So I fused this earlier to warm it up, so unless it's really, really cold, this should work. I'm going to pull it off of the backing at this point, and you'll see that the backing is totally separate. And at this point, there's a dry adhesive on here, so you do not want to get this on anything. So if you lay it down on your table and you've got stuff stuck to your table, whatever, it's all just going to come right off. So I am going to add this to my painting like that. Great. And now I'm going to use, there's a tool that comes in it, but you could just grab anything. I'll use the handle of my scissors for now because it's round. You don't want anything that's going to cut into the transfer itself. So there's a lot of texture on this base. So I'm really having to use my scissors to conform to the shape and the roundness and the ups and downs of the actual surface. Like I have to follow that texture because anything that isn't rubbed or sort of adhered, burnished, that's the word I'm looking for. If it hasn't been burnished, it's not going to stick. It's going to stay on your carrier paper, that shiny paper that I was showing you. So once your image has transferred, it actually goes kind of foggy, if you will. So that means that it's released from that paper. And I find it takes quite a bit of, I'm going to use the handle of my, of a plastic paint tool, just because I'm finding the scissors are a little awkward in my hand. So this is a plastic palette knife. So again, I'm not afraid that it's going to cut the actual image. So I can see that the text has transferred because it's gone foggy. So I don't think you guys can see that, but if you can, the text has gone foggy, and then the corner of the bird right here has gone foggy in a few places. So what that actually means for me is that I can grab that corner and try and get this right in so you guys can see. So as I'm lifting carefully, I'm burnishing ahead of the image to make sure that it is actually indeed all transferred from this carrier paper onto the onto the painting itself. I have to make sure that if I just were to grab it and rip it right off, then I would definitely end up with spots that are still stuck to the carrier paper. And I'm not going to lie, these aren't cheap. So you kind of want to make sure that they are, you know, being used and applied in the best way possible so that we're not wasting them, right? Okay, so I'm just like I say, I'm always burnishing ahead of where I'm lifting, ensuring that it's all stuck. Now that is all stuck, but to make sure it's all stuck, I'm going to put the plastic paper and I'm just going to use my fingers and just make sure it's really stuck. So if any little bit lifted and there's an air bubble between it, when we go to fuse it, you burn a hole right through it. So I'm just making sure that it's really, really, really stuck. And I'm going to rub over it, and it is actually truly on there. Okay, so now this is a great base for a painting for me. But I do have to fuse this in very lightly. So I'm going to turn this on. Hey Terry, hey Kathy. See, I got a bunch of you watching today. I can sort of see questions, so if you have any, make sure you fire them off. All right, good. Okay, so a light fuse is all that's necessary, and then now we'll be able to continue working with this by applying more encaustic and doing more things to it. But for now, that is basically how simple it is to integrate these transfers, and how, this is why I call it pure magic, because it is so simple and such an easy way to incorporate imagery, especially if you're going to use your stylus or something and continue to paint over top of it. Hey Debbie, thanks for tuning in. And so that is that. So today we're talking about image transfers, and just, I want to call it the magic of image transfers because I'm just so in love with how they work. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to apply something a little bit different on this one. And so I'll show you a couple different techniques. But on this one, what I could do is, so this image, I'll make sure it's still on the backing. This image has curled back on itself. That's bad, bad, bad. Because the transfer paper, I wasn't paying attention. So this image actually has a branch on it, so I'm going to cut that out and use it, but I have to find the other part of it, because the other part of it is somewhere on a different sheet. There we go. Now, because there's a postal mark on this one, I think I'm going to include maybe, no, I'm not going to include them for now. I can always add them later. I just have to cut around them, making sure that I'm cutting with the back paper on here, right? We can't eliminate that back paper because it will stick back on itself and you'll ruin your transfers. So I'm going to roll that carefully with the backing, back up and put it back in the tube. And then now I have to find the other part of that image. So it would be the top of two brown birds. So we'll see if it's on this one. There it is right there. So I'm going to cut that one out. Again, remembering that the little hash mark lines are simply there for registration. So if you're working on furniture or on a painting and you need to make sure it's lined up, it just gives you the horizontal and the vertical marks so you can be sure that your image is going to be straight. So this one's a two-parter, so that's okay. I'll put the top part aside for now. And these images are they're quite opaque. So what that means is we can even put them over a dark spot and they'll still show up. So I'm not going to say that I recommend that entirely. And what I mean by that is that if you put it over something super dark, it will actually work, okay? So what that means is that you will just see your image. It's not like a rice paper transfer or something where the opacity really matters. This is quite opaque, so your whole image is going to be on there. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that if you are using a dark background and then these bright things, kind of like this one that I just did for you in the lime green, now I have to worry about integration, right? Because this is just basically a transfer of a bird sitting on top of some green wax. So how I integrate that now is going to be a bit trickier. So I'm going to use, because I have a very white light area at the bottom, I'm actually going to use that to my advantage. And I'm going to put something, yeah, let's put the birds, make sure you guys can see. I'm going to put the birds at the bottom like this, I suppose. So let's just see how that works. Then that way I just have to put some clear over top and I really don't need to worry about too much integration. So if I have color on my panel, then there's just a bit more of that to do. So anyway, so let's just do this first and then I'll talk a bit more about composition and placement and stuff like that. But for the time being, I'm just going to start the process of transferring. I'm going to cut the edge of that flower off, only because it'll be really difficult to start it if it's wrapped around the edge. It'll still be stuck to the carrier paper, and if it's still stuck to the carrier paper, it's not transferring onto your design. And if it's not transferring onto your design, then what's the point of doing this, right? So burnish, burnish, burnish really well. So I do an initial burnish, which just kind of, you know, tells the whole thing. Okay, stay put, this is where we want to be. And then if you have texture, a lot of it will conform to the texture only if you burnish it. If you don't burnish it, it's just going to sit on top and stick to your carrier paper. So burnish really well. Okay, so I'm going to start in this corner and I'm going to stay ahead of the peel. So what that means is as I'm lifting, I'm burnishing ahead to ensure that it stays put. So these transfers have like been, for me, just such an insane way of adding imagery to some of my more background pieces that it's given me such a jump off point. And sometimes that's the little kickstart we need, right? Like we have a lot of backgrounds, we don't know what to do with it. And then throwing in an image just somehow gives the painting a bit of soul, a bit of life, a bit of a flavor, a bit of a story to tell. And then how you integrate that, how you further embellish that, is what makes your art signature to you, right? So if you just leave it and fuse it and cover it with a bit of clear wax, then that's all good. If you are a person who likes to retouch and hand paint, well, of course, then there's so many options available to you. But at this point, you do have to stay encaustic friendly, meaning that it all has to be acceptable by, there we go. So you can see I've got the bottom one on, right? So now I'm going to do the top one. But anyway, everything has to be encaustic compatible at that point. So let's take that part off the carrier sheet, line those up, making sure there's no space, or then you're going to have a really interesting design flaw to incorporate if your images don't line up, or if you've left a space. There's really no coming back from that one. So I'm going to grab my corner. I have to say this plastic palette knife is quite a good tool for this. We also have these little blue scraper tools, which I don't have right here, but I would love to try this also for burnishing, because I imagine we also have plastic bone folders, and I don't have one right here either, but I have to say those are really great for these transfers. Oh, here you go. So this one actually is what comes with it. It's a little wooden stick, and yeah, it works in a pinch. Is it my favorite tool? Probably not, but it does come with it, so you might as well give it a try. Staying ahead of the peel. Burnishing, burnishing, burnishing. The reason I don't love this tool as much is because in furniture, this works really well because our furniture is flat, right? But if you want to actually conform it to different shapes, there we go. There. So you can see this one now is on the bottom, and it's not integrated yet, but you see how easily this is like giving this painting a bit of a, like I said, a soul, a purpose, a flavor. It's giving it something, and now I can go ahead and I can fuse that in very lightly using my Iwatani torch. If I haven't mentioned it before, what I love so much about the Iwatani torch is that, there we go, is that it's got a nice huge aperture, like the opening is just really big, so it gives a nice big broad flame. And then using this dial here, so this is how long you want it, but using this dial here you control how hot you want it. So you can see it there's that little blue flame inside. The hottest part of the flame is at the tip of that blue. Let me see if I can get that going for you guys to see. But at the tip of that blue, there you go. Up here, don't want to burn myself while showing you, but at the tip there, that's the hottest. So in encaustic, we don't need it that hot. So I'm going to actually reduce that to just a wee little bit, and then I can calm the flame down. So now it's a nice big wide passage of heat. It's not necessarily this concentrated thing that you get from like little creme brulee torches and stuff. So that's why I like this one so much. Okay, so I've integrated that. Now I'm just going to bring over a bit of my clear encaustic. There we go. So applying a bit of clear encaustic over the top. So this is why I was saying if you have a lot of color, you may find it difficult to integrate the two things. So that's why over a lighter background, even though the images are opaque and sit nicely, you'll get a nice cleaner integration by going over a lighter area. So, and maybe that might be a bit advanced for some of you, but just ignore that. If it's like, what is she talking about? That's going over your head, not to worry. So I'm going to fuse this. I added a little bit at the top just to maybe settle that green down a little bit so that the bottom isn't as separate. And the rest of the painting will need some work. There's no doubt about that, but I just wanted to show you how easy it is to apply these and to start sort of that seatedness or that integration of the image into the painting itself. So we'll let that cool for 1 second, then I'll hold it up. So it's foggy because it's warm, right? But you guys will get the idea. So you can see what this looks like, right? So I have essentially, which is just an abstract painting, which is layers and layers of encaustic that have really had no purpose or no direction or no meaning to this point. And now I've given it a bit of direction, a bit of a story by putting these two birds on a branch. So that is how I would do that. And I'm going to show you one more thing. So the last thing was the first painting I had showed you, which is really crazy. It's like a wild abstract background. And all I did was, let me just close that. So what I did was I just stuck it sort of like floating up in midair here. But the interesting thing is that it had like these little perched feet. And then the perched feet were just kind of like, what were they perched on? Nothing. So you could tell that this needs something else. And so because this painting, like I said, it's just layers of encaustic, and rather than fusing it all out the way I did with the other one, turning it into more of that acrylic pour look, I decided that I was going to work with that bird image. So I just transferred him up there the way I've been showing you. And now I'm going to show you what we talked about the other day, which was stamping on rice paper. So we have these new stamps in the store, and I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of rubber stamps. If you're a mixed media artist, you have rubber stamps. You have oodles of materials and things that you probably haven't touched in a long time. That is one of my goals, to get you to use all your materials and your tools. Pardon me as I just ripped this out. So what I'm doing is I'm just ripping a border around this. And this is the fibrous rice paper that we have in store. It comes in a big roll of 12 sheets, and we currently have it on sale for $12. So if you don't have this, honestly buy a roll, because you will never find rice paper as affordably as we have it. And I use rice paper in nearly every single project. You can print on it, you can stamp on it. It integrates so beautifully into mixed media and to encaustic. And so we are going to use it in this image, because what I've done is we have these stamps called Springtime. I'll show you this part of it. Springtime. And that's a little bit better right there. You can see there's different branches. There's all different types of things. And what I do with that is I ink up a stamp pad. So we have clear stamp pads, which are called uninked, and I will link that into the video and into the product later. I'll explain to you how to find all that at the end. But basically, you will just use your stamp pad, and your stamp pad needs to be really liquidy, so really juicy, if you will, for these big stamps. And so what I do is I keep the ink now. We buy the ink in the tube, so the ink we have is, again, I'll link the product, but it comes in a tube, and so you're able to put it on the ink pad. If you already have a previous ink pad, you can use it with that as well. However, I find that it thank you, Emmy. It's nice to see you back too. Anyway, I missed everybody as well. I'll just a little segue here. I've moved studios. I've done all kinds of things. I've turned my store into completely into an art supply store with my partners Pam and Judy. It's been a lot of work, and now we are working on the marketing for that. So you will see me back all the time now talking about all these new products. So let me get back to stamping. So anyway, so you need the stamp pad, needs to be nice and juicy. So what I do is I buy the ink now in a tube, and then I just put it onto an uninked stamp pad. So I'm gonna have to figure out a better way to do this camera thing. So so I'm not having to squat to say hi. Anyway, so then you'll stamp your branch. So I did that in this case, right? I inked it all up. And then I put it onto the rice paper, and then using a brayer is best. You just rub it across the back, and then you get a nice impression of your branch. So now this is on a translucent background, right? It's on rice paper. So it needs to go in a light area. If we don't put this in a light area, then it's going to definitely show the white, and there's a lot more of the rice paper, and then we have a lot more integrating to do. But it's not a big deal. I'm just trying to position this so that while we're talking here, I'm just trying to position this so that the branch can be around the feet. So ideally I would have put the feet on first, but we'll see what we can do. So if I can put that like that, I think I can make this work. Or I could just choose a different branch, but I think I'm going to try and challenge myself to try and make this work. So normally, if you want to see through the rice paper, you would just wet it, but that's not going to be able to be adhered by the wax. So I kind of have to do this manually, and what I'm going to do is cut around the branch by the feet. And everything is fixable later, right? So I'm not going to stress out too much if it's not perfect. But I'm going to try and leave the area of these little feet exposed. So normally, if you're unfamiliar with this, you wouldn't choose an image that was as challenging as mine with the feet. But for those of you who like a good mixed media challenge, which I must admit I do, this is right up my alley. So I am doing my best here to cut out where the feet go and save the middle part of the branch. Okay, so now I have these little bits of branches. Like I said, this is fussier than any of you probably would ever care to do, but let's just say that I might be a little bit ambitious sometimes, especially when live, and I have absolutely no way of telling what's going to happen. And I'm going to warm up the wax. But I'm going to try not to fuse the bird out, because the bird, remember, is just this very delicate little layer sitting on the wax. So I don't want to fuse him out completely. So warming up the wax to receive the rice paper. Don't have to melt it completely, just make it nice and warm. There we go. And now I'm going to try and incorporate this branch. Tension is rising. Okay, that's good so far. So far, so good. Okay, now I need to add the little bits, and I want to push it into the warm wax, even though it's not fully, there we go. It's not fully, like, adhered or anything. I'm just, by pushing it in, I just sort of incorporated it a little bit. Now I'm cutting around where it overlaps on the body, and that's just a preference thing. If I had my glasses on, this wouldn't be such a silent, tense moment, because I wouldn't be concentrating so hard. I'm getting older, you know, and now I realize that you need glasses when you make art. But they, of course, are in the house or in the purse or in somewhere, but not on my head where they should be. I'm going to cut out the tail part. There we go. Okay, so now let me get my clear wax again, and I'm going to paste that down. So I can show you a little bit closer. It's not stuck there by any means, which is why I can't make it go vertical, but I've just integrated that in, and then the little branches between the legs, I'll add that in just a moment. So let me grab my clear wax. Okay, here we are, clear wax medium, beeswax encaustic medium, and I am just going to try and work from the inside and brush out so I don't end up with any air bubbles or any folds, which would just be one more design element that I had to incorporate. So I'm going to try not to do that. And you're going to see immediately that your image will go a bit translucent. This is exactly what we're going for. Now I'm going to try and add that branch back in between the feet. Let's see how that worked. Not terrible. So I'm just pushing it in place. And then there's a little bit, I'll have to show you that closer up, but there's a little bit underneath that isn't perfect, but I'm going to use my awl pencil and fix that up. So I'm going to also cut the excess off, because let me show you or tell you, I won't show you how to burn your studio down, but I will tell you how to avoid doing that. This little bit of paper that was hanging off the edge, right? It was hanging off the edge of my board, and so I didn't wax it in. So because it's not waxed in, this means that this is highly flammable. So if I were to go pull my torch out to any area of the paper that doesn't have wax on top of it, it is going to catch on fire. So to avoid fires and to avoid the smoke of fires in your studio, you are going to just cut that off, and it is no longer an issue. So make sure it's all gone, and everything else is covered in the medium. So now I'm going to fuse it in. Remember, fuse lightly first. We don't need to do this all in one pass. The more passes you make, I should say, the more the paper will absorb the wax from underneath. So the more translucent it's going to become. So a couple passes is definitely necessary, and a smart way to do this rather than all at once. There we go. So I've integrated that like that. Now I'm going to use the Mylar that we took the image off of, and I am going to place it over top of where my wax is and where my image is, and I'm just going to burnish a little bit. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that is because sometimes the edge of the rice paper likes to creep out when we fuse it. So just to ensure that it's really not going to curl, I just go back over with a sheet of plastic over top. And so I keep a lot of my spent Mylar bits from these transfers on hand, and that way I just burnish them all down. You don't need to press too hard because your wax is very delicate at this point, like I just did there. So just a nice little burnish. Make sure it's nice and incorporated. Okay, so it's not going anywhere. Whoops. Okay, so now you can see that the image of the bird is now on the branch. So some of my images, remember, like the one that I just did before, I'll grab it, was actually on a different branch, but I have added this branch using one of my stamps. So when you do shop for your rubber stamps. A little tip I'm going to give you is to, buy the stamps you like with the little images and things like that. But always try to buy something that you can use in so many projects, or that you see using in so many projects. So the springtime one is great if you like birds, but look at all the different types of branches that come with it, right? So there's budding branches, there's flowering branches, there's naked branches, there's all kinds of branches. And I find that that's really useful over and over again. I also buy a lot of fonts. Sometimes I just like, to have random words and things, or part of words in my paintings, and sometimes I'll just stamp them onto the rice paper and then collage them in, and that way they're not permanent, they're not in there, and then that way they also conform to the shape of any texture we have in the background, right? And then lastly, I'm trying to get this to cool, so I'm stalling for a second while giving you more information. But the other thing is that I am also able to, so I stamped on the rice paper, and I use things like text. I use things like branches, things like that. But I also try to use things as pattern. So when you look at text, for instance, you'll see that like an O can easily just be a circle, and you put it over and over again. I used to have this 8, and I probably have it somewhere in my stamp somewhere. This is when I was like brand new to mixed media, and I used to use that 8 over and over and over again, just because of the way it looked. It kind of looked like an infinity symbol, and I used it often in my painting. So when you're looking at stamps, like I said, try to look at something for repetition and pattern, or same thing with your stencils, right? So I'm going to grab these other stencils to show you. And maybe we'll do this next time. We'll talk about stencils on Tuesday next week. But look at this massive stencil that we just got in. So this massive stencil, like, it's huge, right? It's all these little concentric circle dots. And so there's different sizes and everything else. So I can't wait to use this one in small portions or in its entirety. It's going to look fantastic on all my surfaces. So, okay, so this isn't cool enough yet for me to finish up for you, but I'm just going to show you that right here in the branch where I cut between the, do we have a question? Oh yes, Margot remembers my 8. Yes, I it must be kicking around somewhere. I used to put it everywhere because it was just such a cool little design. So remember that when you're buying your stamps and your stencils, is that you don't always have to use things as literally as they are, but also make sure you buy stamps that you can dissect and just use parts of. So I think that's a good takeaway for stamps and stencils. But anyway, in here you can see, I'm going to try to keep that up close so that you can see it, but you can see the branch doesn't fully continue because I was like cutting and pasting in between the feet. Once this is cool, it's still too warm, I'm going to be able to use my awl pencil, and so I'll just fill in the branch, my black awl pencil, of course. I'm going to fill in the branch and, complete any like weird areas that don't quite conform to that branch, and I'm going to then lightly fuse that, and then that's the end of that. So my awl pencil is, like I said, it is my go-to saving all paintings tool. It's also great for mark making and everything, so don't discount that for sure. But anyway, so that concludes today's talk about decor transfers, which, like I said, I'm just so in love with. These ones are by Prima Redesign. They're on our site. There's all different types, all different sizes. And just look at them for their elements as well, not just for the actual things. So maybe you like birds, but there's also branches. There's also postal marks. There's all kinds of other things. There's script. There's all kinds of things in there, and you can cut little elements out of all of them. It's not just about the bird. So if you don't like birds, then you can use, like little sections of bird here and there in your work, and it will just show up like color or a suggestion of something else. So that is really the conclusion of that. What did I want to tell you is that because so my live is on my website, trying to follow the path of understanding here. The the lives are recorded on my website, and I'll save them to my website. But where I really want you to go to find them later is I have been taking these projects, and within an hour or two of doing the live, I'll have it on our website on www.curatednest.com under tutorials. So if you go to the Learning Center section of the website, you'll see the tutorials, and in the tutorial section, that's where I'm posting all the projects. The project is there. The original is for sale, because I'll be selling my originals on there through that site as well, for those of you who have no intention of making something, and maybe one day you just fall in love with something and think that's a great project. But anyway, the instructions are in the link in the video there. So I've been putting the links of the video in that spot. I'm going to try and raise the camera now so I don't have to squat to talk to you guys. One day I'll have tech savvy qualities, but for now, bear with me. So under the tutorial section, you'll see the project that we did today. So I'll put these images on here so you know which ones, and then we're going to link all the projects, so or all the materials, so that you'll know exactly what it is that I used in each of the demos, and then the link to the YouTube video. So you can always just refer back to the Learning Center on our website on www.curatednest.com and go to the Learning Center, and all the tutorials will always be embedded there. So I'll keep reminding you of that all the time in case you forget where to find the videos, but often it's hard to go back through Facebook and find the video and everything else and re-watch it just to find out specifically what product I used. It's now all on our website. So if you go to there today, you'll see that the project from Tuesday is there. And in fairness, I realized that I did a lot of things in that one video. So from now on, I'm going to do like smaller bite-sized chunks so that you don't have to watch that entire thing over and over again. All right, that's it for today, kids. I'll see you next Tuesday. I hope everybody has a nice weekend. And if you are in the Ottawa area, please do note that our website also has started to list some workshops. So very limited seats because we're mindful of our social distancing and things like that. So also in the Learning Center, you'll see classes and workshops, and we're very excited to announce we're having different types of classes coming in other than mixed media and encaustic, which of course is my baby, but then there's also going to be Amanda will be on there, and she does power text, which is more sculptural with encaustic, so we're going to get her on there as well. And right now we have art journaling starting with Pam, who is one of our business partners, but she is, you can find her work and everything on PR Paints 18. So she's linked in our website as well. But if you want to know anything more about art journaling, I promise you it is such a beautiful, soulful process of mixed media art, and her pages are just so gorgeous they make you want to cry. So really, if you are in the area, I really suggest, I highly recommend you hop on and take one of her classes. She has a 2-day workshop coming up and you won't be disappointed. I think that's it for now. We're going to start building our website, our workshop roster, but for now we've just introduced 2 small workshops just to get the ball rolling. And as we transition into this art studio, art supply center, will be increasingly adding more and more products, so make sure you check that out. Right now we have a 10% off art panel as an introductory price, so make sure you check that out as well. Anyway, that's enough for today, and Suzanne just said, there we go, that she missed the video. Don't worry, I just explained how you get to rewatch all this, and it's all on our website now. So it's perfect. So go into the Learning Center under tutorials, and within an hour or so, this will be posted as a video and then linked all the products that we use today. So Tuesday's project is on there. If you missed it, go back and check it out. YouTube links, everything is there. So we're trying to get more organized, and we're trying to make it easier for you to find all the videos all the time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.